What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. So this is a largely anticipated update on the 6 AWD swap to the Atlas 4200. We have the transmission mocked up to our Atlas 4200 that we have as a spare, sitting on the engine stand behind us, or engine hoist, I should say. But before I dive into this, let's show how we got to this point and what all was required.
So the first thing that was required to start, I guess, before we mocked up everything was I needed to disassemble this MP246 transfer case. And the reason I needed to disassemble it is because the 6 AWD has a 32 spline output shaft, which means I need to put a 32 spline input shaft into this transfer case. Now to do this, you have to split the case, as you can see here. To be honest, I didn't really know what I was doing, and at a couple points in time I wound up having to refer to a couple videos. Those videos can be linked in the description below. At the end of the day, it's really not that hard, but you'll see me fight it a little bit here and kind of disassembled it wrong. And but either way, I'll get into some explanation here soon, and you'll see how it goes.
Well, after fighting this thing and not really knowing what I was doing, this snap ring goes into this slot right here, but you access it from right here. So you have to pull the seal out, which I destroyed, so I will need to get a new input shaft seal. But you gotta pull this seal out to access it. Once you pull the snap ring out, you can remove the input shaft assembly out, and then this snap ring here comes out. This is easy, you just put a flat head here, pop it out. This is the old input shaft. This is the new 32 spline input shaft. Put it back together. This is a clutch friction plate, so you got to put it back the right way. I put it all back together, so now I'm getting ready to put it back in, and then I will reinstall this snap ring. And then after that, what I need to do is actually, I took this apart wrong. There's a snap ring in here, and that will allow this entire assembly to come out. So I could put everything in this case, put the chain on it, and then install this case back onto this case a lot easier than the way I took it apart. So that being said, I'm gonna finish this up and then we'll keep moving forward. All right, we got this thing back together. Now, for anyone that's gonna go do this mod, I've never been inside a transfer case before. It's honestly not that bad, but definitely intimidating when you first open it. So this rail is where the actuator, like slider, rides on. There's a gear in there. Then there's another fork in there that pivots on both of these bolts. They're bolts, but there's dowels at the end of it that ride, so it allows it to move. So as this actuator arm, which has a detent in it, and the shifter moves as that turns, this other piece has a roller on it, you can see, and that moves as well. So that's what's engaging and disengaging four-wheel drive to allow the front input shaft to spin. Right, input shaft in the transmission, power flowing through to the output shaft to the drive shaft. This, when this is engaged, will allow this to spin, which is going to the front drive shaft. Now, since this is automatic four-wheel drive, like auto four-wheel drive, this pack here has a whole bunch of clutches in it. So you can leave it in auto four-wheel drive and it will engage and disengage the clutches as necessary. I don't plan on using that feature. I'm just kind of letting you know how this is assembled. This pickup tube is very important. There's a little O-ring in there you cannot lose. This is a little magnet that's supposed to pick up trash. So it didn't really have that much stuff on it. We cleaned it out. Actually still has a little bit of RTV and stuff from the last time that was in there, but I'm getting ready to brake clean this surface, and then I'm gonna RTV it all back together, and I'm gonna slap the other side of the case on it, and this will be done, and we'll move forward. This is a pump. They do sell this as an upgrade. I have heard that the 246s, this is a problem. This can like eat into the case, but both the case and the pump look good. So for now, I'm just gonna let it ride. Pretty much because like I've been putting this off way too long and I'm getting impatient and I want the 6L80 to be done. So we're gonna get this done so we can finish mocking it up and then take some measurements under the Trailblazer and see what adapter we need to use. But as of now, the input shaft is in. This will bolt to the 6L80 and this is going back together pretty nicely. So I'm gonna lube everything up, put some RTV on, slap it together.
Okay, now that we wrapped up the transfer case and put in the 32 spline input shaft, it was time to install the MTEC transmission adapter. So first I had to put in the longer bell housing dowels. These allow the MTEC adapter to sit on those dowel pins, and then there's still enough dowel left to go into the transmission. Then I installed these flat countersunk Allen head bolts. I got them from McMaster-Carr. You could probably get them from Ace Hardware, but McMaster-Carr, I knew they had the right ones. They weren't that expensive. Those are in the description below. And once I got these tight, really just snug for now, I moved on to the next step, which was putting in the starter adapter. Now this starter adapter I got from Calvin Nelson. They sell it on their website. It's Pack Racing. It fits absolutely great. It works well with the MTEC adapter as well, and then you have to buy a specific starter that it works with. Now what this does is it eliminates the cone that you would see come through the bell housing on the stock starter, and just allows the Bendix to come through. Now once we got all this stuff done, my father-in-law and I, he came over to help me because I've been dealing with some back issues. We started installing the transmission onto the adapter plate, and you'll see here we actually fought ourselves for a little while. Now the whole point of this mock-up was to kind of see if there were any issues. That way I could address them now before getting under the truck, taking the transmission out and then running into issues then. I'd rather go into it knowing everything that I have is going to work, and then if there are any issues, they're going to be with something else, maybe with some fitments, maybe some things need to be clearanced. But the issues we had running into here were some of the bolts I used were a little bit too long, so they would go through the bell housing adapter and then hit the back of the block, and then what would happen was it would pull the plate off of the block. So what I need to do now is essentially mark where all those bolts go through the adapter and hit the back of the block, and then I need to countersink some reliefs for those bolts. Maybe only like 1/8 of an inch deep, but something to prevent that from happening. But watch the rest of it and then we'll get to the end of the video.
All right, so now that we got everything bolted up, the transfer case has the 32 spline input shaft swapped. It's time to kind of go into detail a little bit about, some of the challenges that we had, some of which was, the main reason we mocked this up was to kind of see what issues we ran into prior to putting it into the Trailblazer, because when I go to put this into the Trailblazer, I want it to be as seamless of a process as possible. Now keep in mind, this is a collaboration between True Blue Motorsports and myself. So the goal here at the end of the day is to provide a product. True Blue Motorsports is going to provide a product that's pretty much applicable to a Trailblazer that somebody has with an Atlas 4200 that wants to swap a 6L80. So as easy and seamless as a swap as possible is the end goal. That being said, You know, we're using the MTech adapter plate here, and I realized if you run too long of a bolt to bolt the transmission to the adapter, it will start to bottom out on the actual block itself. So what that requires is a kind of a provision to be drilled into the backside of the block, like a recess hole, allowing the excess threads to go somewhere. That was, you know, one issue. Another issue, which isn't really an issue, it's just me having a learning curve. So we use the Pack Racing starter adapter, which I gotta say is incredible. Like, it's super nice. It bolts up, everything lines up perfectly. It's a really, really nice piece. And that's sold by Calvin Nelson, you know, Nyblack 57. And it allows the use for this starter here, right? And the point of it all is it moves the starter location down to allow clearance for the transmission, because if you look, the transmission bell housing goes right through where the factory starter would come through the block. So obviously that's not going to work. So I didn't know, because I've never put one of these together. When you get the starter out of the box, it comes with like a block attached to it, kind of like an LS starter, where you would bolt it straight up to the bottom of the motor and you'd have two long bolts that hold it. Well, you're gonna take that off completely. And then the three bolts that bolt the starter to that block are going to be reused and put into the adapter. So two of the bolts come in through from the front side of the motor, and then one bolt goes through this hole into the starter. What I really should have done, but I was not aware at the time, is mate the starter up to the adapter first and then install it all as an assembly. Whereas what I did, and there's nothing completely wrong with this, but there is an issue that you would not be able to correct if you do it the way I did. So what I did was I installed the starter adapter onto the block first and then put the starter on. The problem with that is there's a bolt here that's semi-captured by the factory block, and you'll never be able to access that unless you ground out some of the block here, which I don't want to do. So to prevent that, you would assemble this starter adapter to the starter first, and then bolt it all on to the motor. Else you're only going to have two of the three bolts, which probably isn't a problem, but it's something worth noting. Secondly, you know, we had a bunch of hardware that we got from Grainger. I'll show you here. So we got these countersunk Allen head bolts, and we have some spacers for the torque converter. Now, I have not verified that these are the correct spacers for sure, because I haven't looked through the access port to see how far away the torque converter is from the flex plate. This is just what we thought would work. And at the end of the day, these would have to be drilled out anyway, because the converter bolts are a bigger diameter than what the spacers offer. But I will drop this hardware into the video so you can know exactly what to order. These countersunk bolts though, they work perfectly. So these are what's gonna bolt the MTech adapter plate to your motor. And then, you know, they're countersunk because they're gonna be flush with the plate to allow the bell housing to bolt flush up to the block. Moving on, this adapter. So this is a factory 6L80 to 4x4 transfer case adapter. This is too big to work to allow the factory transmission mount to bolt to the factory Trailblazer crossmember. So Jesse at True Blue Motorsports designed a specific adapter. Now, this adapter originally was designed to use the stock Trailblazer transfer case, but the problem is the stock Trailblazer transfer case uses a 5-star stud pattern to bolt to this adapter, whereas the MP246 transfer case that we're using has 6 bolts. So the one that's bolted on here now is the correct length. It's got a weld seam in here, right? And that's the one they used to make this one. So this is the same, literally the same distance, same thickness. It's like 3 1/8 inch, but this one doesn't have any holes drilled in it yet. So we're gonna have this machined to accept the MP246 transfer case pattern on one side, which would be this side here. So these are originally the 5 studs that you would see from a Trailblazer transfer case, but the MP246 has 1 extra stud. So we're going to take that pattern, put it on here, and we're also going to take the pattern that bolts this to the transmission itself, which is this outer diameter recess. As you see, the blue dots are not used. It's the outer ring. That's what will be drilled to allow this to bolt to the transmission. And then again, this will bolt to the transfer case itself. So that being said, we got this mocked up like 90% of the way. I really wanted to see it mocked up with the transfer case, but that's going to take a couple days because I'm going to take our non-drilled piece as well as our factory 6L80 piece, and we're going to take a bunch of measurements from the center line, have this matched perfectly with this, and then the 246 transfer case should bolt up to it, no problem. But we got pretty far. We got the 32 spline input shaft, 32 spline input shaft installed on our new transfer case. And the good thing about the MP246 transfer case, the 99 to 05, I think. I'll put the correct year into the video. But that year has the proper reference voltage, as well as it has all of the same sensors that you would find on your Trailblazer transfer case. So there are 2 speed sensors on this tail shaft. One is vehicle speed and one is, I want to say, output shaft speed. And then you have 1 sensor on your front drive shaft, which is front drive shaft speed, and that's in the stock Trailblazer. Well, the MP246 has all of those same sensors, and they're all the same plugs. It's literally, and it has the same 4x4 actuator plug. So when you plug it in to the Trailblazer, theoretically, and I want to say it's been proven, the Trailblazer doesn't know a difference. It's literally the same transfer case, but it's bigger, it can hold more power, it's beefier, and it has the capability to have a 32 spline input shaft put into it and bolt up to a 6L80. So that's why we went with it. It's awesome. I'm pretty excited. So that being said, once we get this piece machined and we bolt the transfer case up, we're really, I'm gonna say within a month, we should have the 6L80 into the Trailblazer. Now, I will say the MP246 transfer case is about 1.25 inches longer overall from the factory Trailblazer transfer case. So there is no way around getting a new drive shaft. I have to get a new drive shaft. That's fine. I was kind of anticipating getting a new one anyway because we want to run faster times, we want to make more power, and the stock drive shaft in this thing is probably already beyond what its rated capability is. So in an effort for safety and a little bit more power output, maybe, I don't know if that's the right word, we're gonna go with an aluminum drive shaft, a 3-inch aluminum drive shaft, because it's going to reduce rotational weight as well as be a lot stronger. And we're gonna do that for the front and the rear. I don't know if the front's gonna be 3-inch, the front may be smaller. If we can fit a 3-inch, sure, I'll go for it. It's pretty short. It's not gonna be that much money. I anticipate all in all for both drive shafts being made about $800-ish is my guess. My 4-inch aluminum drive shaft that I had made for my Cobra was about $800, and that's with, you know, that's a 4-inch drive shaft that's rated to like 1,500 horsepower. So it's gonna be 3-inch, it's a little smaller, still gonna be rated for a ton of power, more power than this thing will probably ever see, and it'll be safe for us to do, right? So we may do a 4-inch for the rear and a 3-inch for the front. I don't really know yet. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Just know that we're really close to getting this thing put into the Trailblazer, but I've learned my lesson from the past, and it's not to just jump into something like this blind thinking it's gonna work, which is why I'm doing this mock-up now, seeing what issues there are, noting them, and making sure I have all the hardware ahead of time going into the swap. So that being said, thanks for all the support. Hope you guys are excited as I am. By the way, we're registered for Sick Week, so Sick Week 2025, Trailblazer should be there. We're in Sick Week Freaks, and we plan to have a good time. I don't plan on trying to win the class. I don't even try on planning on placing in the class. My goal is to have a good time, have fun, and it gives me motivation to clean this thing up and do a bunch of little things that I've been wanting to do. Put heat and AC back in it, move the meth injection tank around, get some pipes powder coated. I want to get a fiberglass cowl hood, get that paint matched. Obviously get this transmission in, turn the boost up from 9 pounds to 15 pounds, and hopefully start running consistent 10-second times. So with that said, I'm gonna wrap it up. Again, thanks for all the support. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. If you're not subscribed, consider subscribing, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.